Hi, everyone. I'm Cary Smith, and I'm sitting here with Cheri Turner. We're both with Client First Capital. And today we're talking about donor advice funds. Now, in the industry, I hear them called donor advice funds. I hear them called DAFs. I hear them called DAFs, right?
Yeah.
So that goes by a lot of different names. But Cheri, I really consider you the expert on charitable giving and donor advice funds. You did a great article in the last couple of months on charitable giving, which I learned a lot. Thought it was very valuable, and so I'm going to ask you to just really share with us today a little bit about donor advice funds. But first, I'm going to catch you by surprise here a little bit.
Okay.
Um, I have I have a question about donor advice funds that I'm thinking you could still be the expert and still not know the answer to this question.
Okay.
And so if you look at all of the donor advice funds in this country, like all the money that are invested in DAFs, what is that total amount? How much money are in donor advice funds today?
Ooh. Oh, in total, gosh. If I had to guess, I'd say maybe 75 to 80 billion,
Okay.
sorry, 75 to 80 billion.
75 to 80 billion. You know what? I'm feeling pretty smart right now, since you're the expert, is $228 billion, right? And that's
Wow.
as of 2022. So I'm not that smart. I researched it right before right before our video. But I also saw in researching this that the average account size is about $117,000, and
Okay.
so that means there's just under 2 million accounts set up right now in donor advice funds. And to me, that 2 million sounds small. It sounds like donor advice funds are underutilized as a strategy for charitable giving, right?
Definitely, yeah.
And yeah, so with that, let's launch into the questions I have for you that I know you know the answers to. And
Mhm.
so the first question is, tell us what is a donor advice fund?
Sure. I mean, in simplest terms, a donor advised fund is simply an account where you can deposit cash or other assets that you intend to distribute to charity over time. In this situation where you have a donor advised fund, you have a sponsoring organization who manages that account, and the donor is able to distribute to where they want it to benefit, as well as they have some say in recommending how those funds will be invested. And lastly, the person who makes the donation gets a tax deduction for those contributions to the fund.
Okay, great. So you said there's organizations that manage these. Some that I know of. Just to identify what that means. I know that Fidelity has a charitable branch that they have DAF. So does Schwab, and so does Vanguard. And I would imagine there's many others, but a lot of these are people that are in the investment business and in the business of managing assets to begin with, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. So what are some of the benefits of using a donor advice fund as a charitable strategy?
Yeah. First of all, is simplicity, just being able to donate your funds into one place and then being able to have them distributed out to a variety of charitable organizations from that one central location. That makes your end of year tax documentation and stuff very, very simplified, as well as the flexibility of being able to give, again, to a variety of places, all from that one same place. Another advantage is the tax advantages. Um, Essentially, today, people who take a standard deduction on their tax returns are only able to deduct 300 per taxpayer, or for people uh, filing jointly, a maximum of $600. So, for people who tend to be charitably inclined who give much more than that, a donor advised fund is a real good opportunity to make a large contribution at one given time, in which you're able to qualify for itemized deductions and get a write off for that full dollar amount. But then you're actually able to distribute that amount over a period of time and not necessarily in just that one year.
Okay. So Cheri, you don't typically hear simplicity and tax advantages in the same answer, right? So I like that response, right? If it's a way to simplify my finances and at the same time get some tax advantages, that's great.
Yeah.
Um, Now, what I find with most financial strategies is not everything works for everyone.
Mhm.
And so, and although I understand donor advisor funds, do work for a lot of people, what are some of the limitations of donor advised funds, or are there some reasons why this may not be the best strategy for you?
Sure. Yeah, there actually are some limitations. One of them is the requirement that it is donated to a qualified 501c3 nonprofit organization. So, for some people who might want to give to organizations who are not, or philanthropic organizations who don't qualify under that, that would not be able to be done through their DAF account. Another is a lack of direct control of those funds. It is essentially an irrevocable contribution, meaning that money no longer belongs to you and you are not actively managing it. However, you do have some input as to what the investments are, as well as you get to indicate where you want it to go. Lastly, people should be aware that although they tend to be reasonable, there are some administrative fees associated with the operation of these types of funds.
Okay, so there's some fees. There's a little bit of lack of control. It's irrevocable, right? So once you've put the money in there and you've taken the tax deduction, that money is no longer yours,
Right.
right? You can determine when it gets distributed, but it's not coming back to you, is right?
Correct. Yes.
And then I would imagine if it's invested in securities that there's the potential that the money you put in could lose some value depending on how it's invested. So maybe that's a little bit of a risk.
True.
I'm going to mention something that I see as maybe a little bit of a con,
Mhm.
but it's more for a con for the charitable community than it is for the giver, and that is because money can stay in these donor advised funds indefinitely. It means it's not going to work in our community quite as fast, right? So at the beginning of this, we said there's $228 billion in donor advised funds. And so that's $228 billion that's not in the community making a difference for charities. Um, Chances are it will be in there at some point, but it's just delayed. And so that's maybe a con for the receiving organizations.
Good point. Yes,
Okay.
definitely so.
Any any other last thoughts on donor advised funds?
I mean, I think it's definitely something for people to consider who, especially if in your heart you are already charitably inclined, and you would like to ensure maximum benefit both to the charities receiving the funds, as well as ensuring that you're able to get the maximum tax advantage out of it.
Okay, great. Well, Cheri, I can't thank you enough for just sharing your knowledge with us today, educating me a little bit along the way. I'm glad I was able to stump you with an initial question as well.
Did not know
And
that.
so, but if this is something that you're considering or you think you might want to consider, I would say reach out to us at Client First Capital. You can reach us at clientfirstcapital.com. You can sign up for our newsletter where we have videos like this and other written articles on various financial topics, but typically pretty insightful information as well. Or you can just reach out to us and schedule an appointment. So with that, I just want to say thanks. Thanks, Cheri.
Thank you, Cary.
All right. Bye.
Bye.